I'm talking about the structural layer, you know, which is, what do they call it now? The overdependence, you know, on oil. And I'm also talking about, you know, policy pathway. You know, how can government actually intervene, you know, in this matter? So let me start by saying, from the perspective of the impact of, you know, the macroeconomic on the economy. We all know that Nigeria, as it is the top producer of crude, you know, in Africa, and 90%, you know, of our export earnings, you know, comes from crude oil. And over 60%, you know, of our revenue also comes from this same crude oil. So it means that if there is a reduction, or if there is a crash in price, just like we have at the moment, below $60 per barrel, you know, far away from the $75 benchmark for 2025 budgets, there will be low revenues, you know, coming in for Nigeria. And that low revenue means our already tensioned foreign reserve, which is about $36 billion, you know, will take the hit. And it is one of the reasons why in 2020, when we had the historic crash in the price of crude oil, you know, in the country, you know, it dropped down to about 460 naira to $1. So how do I further drive home this point? Let me relate it this way. See Nigeria as a kid who makes money from oranges. And when the price of oranges increases to, like, let's say $10 per basket of oranges, it means more money for the kid. The kid is going to save the money into a piggy bank. The piggy bank here is the dollar reserve. The orange here is the oil. If there is a drop in price of a basket of orange, like let's say $3, you know, it means less revenue for the kid, and that is, you know, less revenue for the dollar reserve. So it means that if the kid is trying to, like, let's say, buy snacks abroad, and the snacks, you know, is being sold in dollars, and there's no enough money in the piggy bank, it means it will be difficult for that kid to actually buy that snack. So what do the kid do? The kid would have to trade in the local currency, which is naira, and this is what actually causes, you know, weak naira. So you see the oranges as oil, then you see the piggy bank, you know, as the foreign, as a dollar reserve. There's an historical context to this also. This is not the first time this is happening. In 2014, the naira was devalued by 8%, and, you know, we had a naira exchanging for a dollar at around 180 naira to $1. But fast forward to 2025, you know, the naira has fallen down to about, exchanging for about 1,650 naira to $1 at the moment. So these are one of the reasons why the naira has not been, you know, insulated, you know, away from the price, or from the crash of the prices of crude, you know, in the international market.
Well, from your analogy of the baskets and the piggy bank and the kid, basically what you're saying is that there'll be pressure mounted on the naira, right?
No, there'll be pressure mounted on the dollar, because I'll still get to that, you know, analyzing
the
this
naira, in the sense that yes, the price has crashed.
Yes.
Now we need to do what? We need to look inward, and then there'll be pressure on the naira gaining ground. Yes, gaining ground. Yeah, yes. That's most
especially if there is no naira inflow into the banking system. You know, there's no way the CBN can actually, you know, stabilize the currency.
Will this help reduce the dollarization of the Nigerian economy as it stands?
Yes, if we need to look inward, you know, take as an instance, the Dangote refinery is one area we should take a look at. In April, you know, an exchange for naira for crude, is in play at the moment. So it is expected that we would exchange naira for crude, and there will be less pressure on the dollar. So it means that prices of PMS in the local currency, might come down. Let's say we are looking between 800 naira and 860 naira band. So there would be no pressure on, on the foreign exchange rate.
Okay, okay. Let's look at it this way. For the naira, with less foreign exchange coming in from oil export, where demand outweighs supply, of course, the naira will be weakened further. And the only way it can be strengthened is if the Central Bank of Nigeria intervenes, or maybe we look towards non-oil revenue. We increase our non-oil revenue. At this point, will inflation get worse?
Yes, is impacting on inflation at the moment. Inflation is about 36%.
Now, the dip in the price of crude, and then we trying to look inwards, looking to having non-oil revenue at the moment. Do you think that by the time it starts, by the time we take proactive measures, will it reduce or worsen our inflation in the country?
It's going to worsen our inflation. How? Because already the CBN is using about $198 million, to defend the naira. So you also look at what the central bank is also doing. Interest rate is about 27.6%, and even deposits in bank. What bank deposits now is just 10%. So that tells you that there is actually low inflow of the naira, into the banking system. Although the CBN is actually trying their best to nip this in the bud. You also look at the budget. The budget is benchmarked against $75 per barrel, but now the price is hovering below $60 per barrel. So this is to tell you that we are not ramping up enough productions. And when you also look at the debt burden again, for 2025 alone, we'll be servicing our debt with about 13 trillion naira. So it means that we'll be borrowing to also plug the gaps, so which further weakens the naira long term.
When the naira gets weak, basically, we'll be looking at fuel prices soaring. With what is on ground now, we might see an increase in fuel prices. We'll have more importation.
Yes, there will be more importation, which means there will be more pressure on the foreign exchange rate. Okay, let me just paint this analogy. Take someone like Aisha, who deals in imported clothings. If you have a weak naira, it means if she's importing from anywhere else in the world, it means that would double the amount. So when she imports a material, clothing, it means she would have to sell double the price. So if she has two options: sell double the price or close shop.
So basically, consumers have to pay more.
Yes. So the burden will be on consumer. So when there's a drop in the price of crude oil in international markets, it affects staple. It affects every Nigerians. From eating rice down to transportation. It affects everything. Have you ever witnessed when your financial pocket is pinching you? That is because there's a fall in the price of crude oil in the international markets.
Is it that as a country we have people who are the helms of affairs of our economy? Is it that they are not futuristic in thoughts? That we only make proclamations as a country, as those who are in charge of of the economy, basically? Yes, $75 per barrel budget, and it ends there. Are they not thinking of diversifying the economy and to stop relying solely on oil as our form of revenue in the country? Is it that you don't think?
You know, while I was talking ab initio at the start of this program, you know, I said I'm going to be talking based on 3 perspectives. So one of the perspectives now that have brought me to is the structural weakness, you know, of the economy.
Yeah.
You know, this means the over reliance and over dependence on crude oil. You know, the Nigerian economy is like a one-legged chair, you know, that is being held up, you know, by oil. So once the price crashes, then the economy begins to wobble, and there are systemic issues as to why you have this kind of economic wobble. One of these is, you know, the debt burden that I mentioned earlier. We'll be servicing the debts, you know, for 2025 with about 14 trillion naira for 2025. Imagine that is very, very humongous. Then you also have the distortion in the foreign exchange market also, whereby you have the parallel markets. I think the parallel market, the CBN has been able to close that gap by 1 naira. So you also have that distortion. Then you have the over reliance of the economy on crude oil. As a country, we have not been able to diversify our economy. In around 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014, you know, when oil prices, you know, crashed in the international market, what held the economy, you know, afloat back then was the non-oil economy. So we have not reached that level yet, whereby we are able to leverage on our exports, you know. Take as an example, countries like Rwanda export coffee. Kenya has shown that, you know, tech hub can actually bring in more dollars. But in Nigeria, we have not been able to achieve that. We've
been able to export some things in Nigeria,
like
especially human resource. We've been able to export brains out of the country.
Yes,
we've been able. Syndrome.
Yes, we have been able. It's a form of exploitation.
Yeah,
but
because many of our doctors have gone.
Yes, but the country have actually not looked in that direction to find a way on how to, you know, leverage on that exploitation of human capital, but to actually help repatriate the funds back home.
Well, that was on a lighter note.
No, it was not on a lighter note. It's actually
for me, it was a lighter note.
It wasn't a lighter note.
For us to export human capital,
yes,
out of the country.
Some countries are making forex out of it. You know, perhaps, you know, the government can actually, if you are exporting human capital out of the country, there should be a way where you sign a pact or an agreement, you know, with the country where you are exporting the human capital to.
That's when you're not, if you're doing it directly, yes, you can do that. But many of these people let indirectly, without government.
Yes, without
government
intervention. Yes. Yeah. Now I am saying that this is an area where the government needs to start looking at the moment.
So I ask you a question. Is it that those at the helms of affairs are not visionary?
Okay.
Is it not that they're futuristic with their plans, especially when it comes to handling the economy of the Nigerian state?
I think I cited this example last week when we had this program. South Korea in 1960. The director of South Korea, Park, you know, he called the chairman of Hyundai. He said he wants to build ship. What did they do? South Korea does not have the technical expertise to do that. What did they do? The chairman of Hyundai, Chun Hee, traveled overseas and got 2 major contracts to build shipyards. He got back to Korea. They sent about 30 disciples abroad to learn how to make ship.
So that's human capital development.
In Scotland.
Yeah, that's human capital development.
Yes, they were able to meet up with the contracts before the expiration of that contract to supply those ships. Now, when you look at South Korea, they control 2/5 of the world shipping economy. There's a town in South Korea called Oppo. The GDP per capita of that city is about $30,000 per citizen. That's roughly the GDP of United Arab Emirates. Now, when you look at South Korea, when they were just developing, they had North Korea side by side. North Korea was much more industrialized than South Korea because of Russian investments in that country. But as time goes on, South Korea overtook North Korea, and they were able to diversify their economy, look beyond what they were producing, and through innovation they are able to earn forex. They have the same history with Nigeria. They've gone through military coup. As at 1965, their GDP was about I think $400. I think our own GDP was even higher than theirs. But when you look at the GDP of South Korea today, it triples that of Nigeria. Have you seen the recent report from the the chairman of African Development Bank, where he said our GDP has actually gone lower than that of 1960. I think it's about $840 per GDP, per citizen per head at the moment. So this tells you that over reliance on a particular resources without having a lookout for other resources and leveraging on other resources to actually build a bigger cake for the economy.
Well, because of our time, quick one. Yes, reality has dawned on us.
Yes, exactly.
That the dollar price has crashed. That's the price of crude has crashed in the international market. We have less than $60 per barrel. Now, are Nigerians prepared for this?
Well, economically speaking, I don't think we are prepared, but I think the CBN is trying to do their bits. They are trying to bring in fiscal austerity. The government is trying to cut spending, even though I haven't seen it. But I have an issue with that. 2027 election is around the corner. Is the government, going to, even if they are going to cut spending, are they going to, is it sustainable? Will they be able to maintain government spending? We all know that, our election is always heavily monetized. That's a very, very big issue. Then the Dangote refinery, I think that should actually give us a buffer, give us a soft landing. If we can, faithfully execute that Naira for crude exchange, that will bring less pressure on the foreign exchange reserve, because at the moment the foreign exchange reserve is about $36 billion. So you also have the budget, about 23% of the budget. That's about, I think, 13 trillion naira. Because of this oil slash in oil price in international crude market, it's going to affect it, because we have a budget deficit of 13 trillion naira. How are we going to fund that deficit? And when you look at 13 trillion naira, it currently trumps what we are earning as revenue, at least with current prices, from crude oil. So a lot needs to be done, from the CBN angle. And I think we should start looking at how we are going to be export-driven economy. There's nothing wrong with importation, actually. But where there's issue with importation is when you have too much importation and you have less exportation. So we must be able to balance between importation and exportation, to achieve net exportation. There are so many countries in the world that is importing, much more than Nigeria does. You talk about countries like Germany, China, United States, but what they have been able to do is balance, importation with exportation to actually give them, net exportation.
With oil at below $60 per barrel, do you think Nigeria can thrive?
Yeah, we can thrive.
Below $60 per barrel?
Yes, we have been...
Considering the figures
we have been
put up for our budget.
Yes, we have been there. We have been there before.
We have a thick skin, right?
We have been there before. At least we devalued our currency by 8% when there was, a very, very serious crash in price of crude oil in international markets, and we pulled through. we pulled through. I believe we can actually pull through.
All right, we'll go on this break, and when we come back, more talking points on the agenda this morning. Stick around. Don't go away.
I had no doubt in my mind that with this collection, we are going to set agenda. More importantly, we are going to enforce social ethics. Because part of the problem of Nigeria is that the state is too powerful and the society is too weak. So when the state begins to misbehave, the weak society has no power to hold them into control. So we begin to do social ethicizing. So we not only report, we will not only inform, we will also set agenda.
All right, welcome back from that break. It's still the agenda on Dominion Brokers Group. Okay, the Lagos State Environmental Task Force has arrested 74 individuals during a cleanup enforcement operation across key areas within the Lekki axis and Lagos Island. Yes, according to a statement shared on X by the Lagos State Commission and Ministry of Environment and Water Resources, yes, Tokunbo Wahab, on Tuesday, the operation commenced around 1 a.m. and targeted hotspots known for disorderly conduct and environmental violations. Let's get to watch some clips from the cleanup, the mop-up on the streets of Lagos.
Hey! So, okay, where the second person? Baba, now you're picking me that?
Yeah?
Now, is that your son?
Not in my picking, but they sleep here sometimes.
From time. Oh yeah, make Baba self go. You go explain that one to. I go hear you tomorrow. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, tell them they should dismantle this place.
Make I carry my
hello. What's your carry?
I'm a cowboy for me here like this. Coach, come.
NIN. Hey, let's carry his NIN. Let's carry it. I carry your NIN.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna scatter this place.
Wait, make it carry your NIN.
Okay.
Come on.
That's the clip there. You just watched that clip there. The areas covered in that sweep in Lagos included Falomo Bridge, Eko Hotel Roundabout, Oniru Beach, the Nigerian Law School, the Lekki Phase 1 and 2, and the 1004 estate. And out of the 74 individuals arrested, 72 were men and 2 were women. Well, the commissioner, that's Wahab, stated that the operation was aimed at restoring sanity, order, and cleanliness in the affected locations. Dorakbo, you saw that, okay, the video on the screen right now. Now, many of them have been arrested there. Now, these are people who have no homes.
Yes.
Going through, following up this yesterday, I found out that there were so many comments, especially on the app X. They have no homes. They feel disappointed by the government. And then they finally found a home on the street. and then they've been arrested and then charged to court. Are they criminals? Is it a crime to find somewhere to sleep? Is it because it's in Lagos, in the highbrow area? If you're going to take them off, don't you think you should rehabilitate these people by creating internally displaced persons camps for them, because they are displaced already? They can't afford to rent an apartment for themselves, hence sleeping on the street. I'm not saying it is right to sleep on the street, but can they help themselves at the moment? Can they afford? You know, the talking point now is, why arrest them and charge them to court? As who? As what?
Well, this is what the weak naira causes.
The weak naira?
Yes, this is what it causes. You know, the weak naira means inflation at 35%. Obviously, the 74 people arrested, you know, cannot feed themselves. Even according to the World Bank data, that an average Nigerian or a poor man earns about $2 a day. These ones cannot even earn $2 a day. It's so obvious. Food prices are up by 80%. It's so obvious they cannot afford it. Even for people that actually work 9 to 5, that they have an enabling job, there's still a form of housing deficits, you know, and people are still complaining about rents. Obviously, these ones on the streets, you know, cannot even afford the house. That's why you find them, you know, as destitute, under shacks, you know, trying to make a living for themselves. When you look at it, it tells you that
sorry, Dolapo, you can see on the screen the old man who was told to go with the police there, telling the police that he needed to pick his NIN.
Yes.
You know, that seemed to be the only thing, the only credential, the only document he ever has on him in his life at that moment.
At that moment, it's a form of identification.
He's still patriotic.
He's still patriotic despite the hardship.
Despite the failure of government.
I think there is a lot of migration from the rural areas, you know, down to the urban areas.
Rural-urban migration.
When you look at the percentage of people who live in poverty in the urban areas, is above 60%. So these, what we just saw on TV, is just the microcosm or a few numbers of the poverty, people who live in squalor, you know, that were just arrested. That was what we just witnessed on, you know, on this clip at the moment. So life is very hard, you know, charging them to courts. You know, in Nigeria, we love creating more problems. We love creating problems, more problems from, you know, problems.
You know, it reminds me of Fela Anikulapo Kuti many years back when he sang a song that he was charged for wandering, you know, and then you ask for wandering. Every man doesn't know where he's going to. He doesn't even know how he'll get the next meal.
You see,
and then we stop him on the road, we arrest him.
My point is, the prison, the correctional home, is already congested.
Saturated, you know.
Now you throw these lots back into the over-congested correctional centers.
That's not even the point now.
So
the point now
when
is
you look
this,
at
Dolapo, the point now is this: you're charging them to court. They're going to be granted bail, and you know, you and I know that you know, once in a while, bail is supposed to be free, you know. But you see, these guys who cannot even afford to
feed,
to get an apartment for themselves, are they the ones to pay to get themselves off the hook? What hook precisely are we looking at? Well,
like I said, they will just be remanded in prison. That's just it.
For nothing?
For nothing. You know, for nothing. So I think this is a time where civil societies need to stand up, you know, fight for them. If they can get some of them back to wherever they came from, I think that would be fine. At the moment, the economy is not smiling.
You talked about taking them back to wherever they came from.
Yes, we've seen it. We've seen it happen before during the administration of Governor Raji Fashola. He deported
many people to different places in the country.
Yes.
Yeah, but
you know, instead of remanding them in prison.
Yeah, but you
why
see,
not?
But you see this. This is a group of people who have found home on the streets. So if you say you're taking them back to wherever they're coming from, where is home to them?
See, whether we like it or not, this is a crisis on our hands. It is a crisis. And they believe that, you know, migrating down to Lagos, migrating to highbrow areas like Lekki Phase 1, Falomo, that they can be able to secure menial jobs that would, you know, put food on their table. But or
maybe put food on the ground because they don't have a table on the streets.
The table is just a metaphor in this,
okay.
you know, in this,
of course, I understand.
Yes, in this instance. So it's actually a mess. It is a mess.
Has the government failed these people?
Yeah, the government has failed them. I would say that the government has
failed you.
Well, the government has failed. Well, the government has failed almost everybody.
Has the government failed you?
Yeah, because I provide my own light, I provide my own water, I provide my own road, and I am my own local government. I provide my own security.
You are the governor to yourself.
I'm the governor to myself. So I would say they have failed in their responsibility in trying to protect me, and in also trying to fend for me, and in also trying to, you know, provide an enabling environment so that I can thrive, you know, economically.
We'll go on a break again, and when we come back, more talking points on the agenda. Stick around, don't go away. All right, welcome back from that break. Okay, final lap on the agenda this morning. Prominent economist and political activist, Professor Pat Utomi, has inaugurated a shadow government composed of members from various opposition parties. According to Utomi, the Big Tent Coalition shadow government, launched virtually on Monday evening, will function as a credible opposition force, highlighting the failures of the Bola Tinubu administration while offering ideas for better governance. Pat Utomi, however, justified the move, arguing that policy missteps by the current federal government had worsened poverty, driven multinational companies out of the country, and intensified terrorism in Benue and Plateau states, alongside rising insecurity and corruption nationwide. He said a shadow cabinet made up of figures drawn from several opposition parties was created to respond to what he called a national emergency. But in a swift reaction, the federal government kicked against the move, describing it as an aberration in a federal system of government. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, said, and I quote him, "At a time when our nation is set to celebrate 26 unbroken years of presidential democracy, the idea of a so-called shadow government is an aberration." Dolapo Anjorin. We're talking about a coalition some weeks back, spearheaded by the former presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2023 general elections, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. However, this is another coalition, but this one was virtually created by renowned economist Pat Utomi, bringing people from several political parties, from several walks of life, and saying, we want to create this shadow government. Well, The federal government has reacted and said it is an aberration. Can there be a government within a government? Some will say treason, right? But here it is virtual, saying enough is enough. It's tired of, well, the whole Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led administration, the policies and all that, saying it is time to emancipate the people of Nigeria. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's shocking to actually hear the rebuttal of the federal government saying it's an aberration. If you backtrack to around 2014, 2015, when the APC was in opposition, you know, they threatened to form a parallel government, you know, and nobody criticized them for that. Creating a shadow government is in no way a treason in any form.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, a shadow government, you know, is found in the parliamentary system of government. We have the legitimate shadow government, and we also have the conspiratorial shadow government. So I think the one Patutomi is forming is the legitimate shadow government. Where
How so is it legitimate?
Yeah, because where you talk against the missteps of governance, you know, take as an instance, we just discussed the weak naira, you know, due to the drop in
oil price
in international markets. You know, what are the governments doing about it? You know, this is what the shadow government is supposed to mirror. You know, talk about policy somersaults of the government, you know, put them on their toes. And I think the reason why we are having a shadow government is because opposition parties, civil societies, media, the Nigerian citizens, they've not lived up to the expectations, you know, to demand accountability, you know, from the ruling party. That's why you see a shadow government. I think if I were to be putting, or let me say, profiling solutions to the issues of Nigeria, I think I would want to profile the solution of, you know, let us move back to a parliamentary system of government, whereby if you are performing badly in government, there will be a vote, they will pass a vote of no confidence in you, and you have no choice than to actually step down. The shadow government, like I said, is present in the parliamentary system of government. It puts, you know, the party in power. It puts them on their toes. So why is
it gives room for checks and balances?
Checks and balances. So why is the current administration afraid of criticism?
Okay, so Utomi justified the move, arguing that policy missteps by the current federal government has worsened poverty. Do you agree with him?
Yes, I agree with Pat Utomi. I agree with him. When you look at the data, you find out that, you know, you talk about, you know, inflation, you talk about the pension value of recent adjustment, that it has lost its dollar value by 56.7%. So these economic indices, you know, is a pointer to the fact that the current economic policies are actually not working. That's why Pat Utomi is calling it, you know, policy missteps.
So part of the policy missteps by the current federal government, according to Pat Utomi, which we also know, is that it has driven multinational companies out of the country. Yeah, we have so many companies that have left the country, and many products are no longer in the market. Yes, he also made mention of intensified terrorism in Benue and Plateau states, alongside rising insecurity and corruption nationwide. That these are part of the policy missteps of this present administration.
Yes, is actually right. The question is there no insecurity in almost every geopolitical zone in Nigeria? The answer is yes. The question is inflation not about 34%? The answer is yes. So there are a lot of policy missteps, and we need individuals, Nigerians, we need groups, we need civil society, we need people that can actually put, you know, government on its toes to do what they are supposed to do.
Well, the government has reacted. through the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris. Mohammed Idris came out to say it's an aberration. You see, the word aberration, how does it fit into a shadow government by Patu Tommy?
Well, I think that's a misuse of word from the minister himself, if he's calling that as an aberration. Obviously, he does not understand what governance means. He does not understand the roles, you know, of what pressure groups, such as this shadow government, I believe they are coming under the auspices of a group.
So we need a shadow government right now?
Yes, we need a shadow government at
to
the
put
moment.
this present government in its toes,
yes,
right?
on its toes, exactly.
Okay, so what if this present government rebels against the shadow government? Would that be democracy?
Well, they are at liberty to listen to what the shadow government is saying, and they are also at liberty to actually take the criticisms, the solutions being offered, take it in their stride and make life better for Nigerians. Another election cycle is coming, so that would determine how far they are willing to go. Maybe they will still be in power for the next election cycle, or Nigerians, the shadow government will galvanize the pain, the anger of Nigerians, and make sure that the needful is done at the polls.
Maybe I ask you the needful later on, maybe in subsequent programs, because I don't know the needful you're talking about. All right, thank you there for being there. I've been speaking with Dominion Broadcast Group in-house analyst Dolapo Anjorin this morning on the agenda. Thank you there, listener, for being there. Let's keep this conversation going. Please do follow us on our social media platform handles, and that's on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. It's at Dominion Broadcast. And on the app X is at Dominion Cast. My name is Chike Ubogu. Do have a great day and be good.